another mystery of the deep. As hopes fade for the 5 wealthy Titanic tourists who vanished while exploring the wreck aboard a mini submarine, one question keeps arising. What happened?
By the way, there's a breaking news right now that the Coast Guard has found a debris field which they're trying to analyze, and they fear that might be actually coming from the Titan itself. So the implosion theory, it's becoming more and more plausible.
It is possible that no one will ever know after the sub, called Titan, suddenly went silent hundreds of miles off the coast of Canada and around 13,000 feet underwater beside the Titanic. On board was a British billionaire, one of Pakistan's richest men and his son, a famed French explorer, and the CEO of the company running the dive. They began their voyage early Sunday with 96 hours of oxygen inside the sub and have not been heard from since.
Jesus Christ.
Submarine experts agree that 5 possible accidents are the most likely cause. Perhaps the most obvious explanation is that the submersible became tangled in the wreckage of the Titanic itself. The ship split into 2 pieces as it sank back in 1912, and those sections now lie amidst a huge debris field on the seabed. Navigating the wreck is extremely dangerous, according to those who have dived it. It is possible that the sub's pilot got disoriented, perhaps after communications were interrupted, causing the craft to get snagged. Another explorer has described how a sudden undersea current swept his submarine into the wreck, getting it temporarily stuck. Titan is equipped with drop weights, which can be thrown overboard to give it extra buoyancy, potentially freeing it and helping it float to the surface. But if it is stuck, for example, inside the Titanic, there could be little the crew would be able to do except wait for help. A banging noise.
You know, the thing that I see a lot on the Twitter here is also the lack of empathy for those rich people because they're rich, and draw comparison to like immigrants. I disagree on that stance because also illegal immigrants, which they board illegal ferries and they pay criminals to be ferried across the Mediterranean, for instance, they take huge risks. Nobody knows where they are. Sometimes they don't communicate well, and sometimes even the guy riding the boats, they just leave them there, and then they contact the NGOs that they're supposed to be saved. So rescues are always sent for people in danger at sea, but sometimes it's just no, and when you take huge risks, a lot of these people die. So there is that.
On the hull of the sub to attract attention, but rescuers have still been unable to find the craft.
But the lack of empathy that I see on Twitter
Titan
is frightening,
could also
honestly.
have suffered a power outage or equipment failure. The sub relies on batteries to power the communications, and a failure could explain why it lost contact with the surface. But they also power the engines, the lights, and the heating.
Jesus.
A catastrophic failure would have left the sub dead in the water, in complete darkness, and in freezing temperatures. If that is the case, experts say the cold could kill quicker than the lack of oxygen. Questions have been raised over the quality of the sub after one passenger pulled out over fears the company building it were cutting corners. He discovered that scaffolding poles were being used as ballast, and a video game controller was being used for steering. After that, he demanded his money back. An OceanGate engineer...
Man, the Logitech controllers freaking kills me. It's unbelievable. You ask $250,000 as a ticket to go down. Safety should be the priority. Like enough testing to go down. And I also read that the CEO was sort of boasting in the past that he didn't want a 50-year-old white man to drive the submarine because it's not inspirational. And then you think, like, you need a fucking incredibly qualified human being to drive this thing. Doesn't matter whatever diversity or age. So that was an absolutely asinine type of comment. And look at where they are now.
Safety concerns about the structural integrity of the sub, and an industry body wrote a letter in 2018 criticizing the company's experimental approach. Losing power would make the sub harder to find, and there will still be the matter of getting it back to the surface when its engines aren't working. They may still be able to surface, but there is no sign of the vessel yet. Alistair Grieg, a professor of marine engineering at the University College London, said rescue options will be extremely limited if the sub is without power. Another possibility is that the sub has become tangled on a piece of debris like a fishing net. Thousands of so-called ghost nets are swept around the deep ocean after being lost by trawlermen.
Man, this is honestly the only solution here, like that they managed to go back to the surface, because now apparently it's already a couple of hours that the oxygen ran out, if the calculations are correct of how much oxygen they had. And even if they would be found the location right now, just to go down, whatever the depth is, will make it basically close to impossible to save them. The only scenario, if they manage to go back on the surface, and I don't know how it works with the air, if they, the recycling air, once you're in the surface, that they, you can have new oxygen in or something,
A Russian submersible called AS-28 became tangled on just such a net while it was underwater off the Kamchatka Peninsula in far eastern Siberia. The net got caught in its propellers and caused it to sink to the seabed, with a British underwater drone brought in to cut the netting and free it. All 7 crew members made it safely to the surface 2 days later.
Wow.
But they were stuck under just a few hundred feet of water, compared to the Titan's 13,000. To cut the craft free, rescuers will first have to find it, and sonar is not good at distinguishing the sub from the wreckage of the Titanic scattered around it. And even if it can be cut free,
5 people in such a small place, I'm like, my God, what a nightmare.
The Titan will still have to make it back to the surface on its own, because transferring the crew to another vessel at that depth is impossible.
Possible. How do you can't open anything? The pressure from the inside.
After the submersible suddenly stopped communicating with no explanation, a catastrophic implosion of the vessel has become a leading theory. G. Michael Harris, an experienced Titanic explorer, fears that is exactly what happened, 10,000 feet down, where the pressure is 350 times greater than at the surface. When a submarine's hull fails at depth, the pressure of the ocean will almost instantly crush it and anyone inside. Even a small fault in the carbon fiber and titanium hull could have caused the accident, and Titan's 3 previous voyages were cancelled over fears of structural fatigue. Owners OceanGate said the vessel, which features many homemade components such as hardware store washers, had been repaired since and was equipped with a sophisticated system to monitor for any problems in the hull. But if an issue had suddenly occurred deep underwater, it is doubtful the crew could have done anything in time to save themselves. Just such an incident occurred in 2017 when the Argentinian Navy submarine ARA San Juan went missing in the San Jorge Gulf. The wreck was only located a year later, scattered deep down on the seabed. It is not known exactly what caused the accident, but it is thought an electrical failure caused it to dive beyond its crush depth, causing an implosion, killing all 44 people on board.
My God, 44 people on board. Oh, poor people, man.
Instantly. Another possibility is a fire on board, perhaps caused by water getting into the electrics. In 2019, a blaze broke out inside the battery compartment of the Russian submarine Losharik while it was 1,000 feet underwater. Fighting the fire in corridors as narrow as a few feet, the crew managed to get Losharik back to its parent submarine, which hauled it to the surface. 14 submariners, some of the most experienced and highly decorated in the whole of the Russian Navy, were killed. If a similar blaze
Jesus.
were to break out on board the Titan, then the results could easily be fatal. Even if the crew somehow got the flames under control, the fire could knock out the electronics and eat up the oxygen inside the tiny 21-foot craft. There is still a lot we don't know about the Titan's fate, or the fates of the men on board.
Honestly, this doesn't look like it ends well, honestly. This must have been some kind of accident, and now with the news of this new debris field found, most likely the implosion theory. And the sad part is probably also the bodies will be never found, of course, also for the families. Absolutely tragic day for human exploration in general.
Itself to the surface, then there is hope that they can be saved.
Wow.
But if it is really stuck at the bottom of the ocean, then the chances of finding them alive are slim.
You really need a
and
miracle
fading
here.
Fast.
Really need a miracle.